Having dealt with Dr. Electron, he now wants death to the Man of Steel. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the Gold Label Collection, Atomic Skull versus Superman. While on an experimental Star Labs submarine, scientist Joseph Martin was exposed to nuclear energy. Shipwrecked on a desert island, he survived by releasing deadly nuclear blasts from his mouth. His skin, his muscles literally peeled off his face, inspiring him to create the supervillain for hire persona, Atomic Skull. He regularly clashed with Superman both alone and with criminals such as Major Disaster and the Royal Flush Gang. In recent times, Martin reformed, fighting criminals with the Metropolis Special Crimes Unit, Superwoman, and the Teen Titans. As Martin's tried to place where he left his face, let's grab the tape measure and measure both the Superman and the Atomic Skull as part of this set. Superman is a reuse of the original Action Comics Superman, though does the colors a little bit more classic. Atomic Skull is more the unique figure, although he is using some of the elements from the armored suit Lex Luthor. I'll bring him in a second. First, though, back to Superman. The figure stands at almost 7 inches. He's actually about 6 3/4 of an inch in height, or the figure's about 17 centimeters tall. Being the fact that he does have the flame gives him a little higher reach than Superman, and Atomic Skull is actually closer to being about 7.5 inches in height, or 19 centimeters tall. Speaking of Superman, bringing now in the original Action Comics version of the Superman, who approached the colors and the mold a little bit darker. Whereas we get the more classic colors that get packed along with Atomic Skull, the original approach to Superman using this mold had the colors of the blue and the red much darker. Notably as well, the Superman emblem on the front of his chest had also a metallic red finish, as opposed to the one that we get here with Atomic Skull, matches the colors more to his trunks and his lower boots. We also did get this version of Superman also as well, used the same mold again, although with this one, it actually uses a more angrier expression. I believe this Superman got packed along with another figure. As for Atomic Skull, while some of it is new mold, the figure, though, still uses some of the component pieces that made up the original armored suit Lex Luthor. Ironically enough, though, it's not necessarily the torso, which you would imagine would have been the same thing that they would have used. Rather, it's actually his arms and his lower legs. The fact that they are packing again Action Comics 1000 Superman, you would also probably imagine that they're going to be using the same trading card. Yes and no. What do you mean yes and no? Wouldn't it be yes or no? Yes and no in the sense that they're actually using the same image. But what they're doing differently, though, is if you look at the original Action Comics card that came included with that Superman, it's a farther away shot, whereas this one actually zooms the same image in. So it is a yes and no, in the sense that they are using the same image, but this one just is zoomed in a little bit more. Something also that they omit is that the original card listed as Action Comics 1000 as the source material. This one only just gives you a general idea that it's from Action Comics, but doesn't tell you actually the issue in which this image is taken from. So again, like, it's the same card, but it's just slightly different from one another. You may notice also as well that I got myself 2 of these. Reasons unknown. When I first was removing the cards from inside the cardboard, I realized that I got 2 of the exact same card. I'm sure that's not intentional on everybody's. On the back, though, of the card, you'll notice one thing that also has changed. They zoom into the image of Superman, so you're only just seeing his face. This one showed a little bit of the Superman emblem, and again, omitting that it's Action Comics 1000, telling us that it's only from Action Comics. Something that they also have done away with is providing both the height and the weight of character, which I don't miss. I don't think it necessarily needs it. I think if anything, it needs a real name and probably the source material. Height and weight could be something that does vary from comic to comic. Superman doesn't always look the same in every single comic. You could make the argument that in Action Comics 1000, that's where they based his height and his weight from. I don't think necessarily it needs it. What they also have done also is that they've increased the size of the font, and you don't get as much to read. The original one had a lot more to read. You get a lot less of it, but it's easier to see, especially if you have old eyes like myself. So it is not quite the same card, but they're definitely using the same idea. Move those to the side. The figure also as well, both figures come also included with an Atomic Skull card. The fact that this is the first Atomic Skull also means, just by that, it's also the first Atomic Skull trading card that we get. Featured on the front is a really nice image of Atomic Skull. Featured on the back, though, his real name is Joseph Martin. Not necessarily a first appearance is listed, but they give you at least an idea, a character breakdown of what Atomic Skull's origin would be. I still wish that they could have added the first appearance issue, but the fact that DC is always relaunching itself, what would have been the original appearance before would have now just been changed, and years later, the first appearance would have been like from something recent instead. Nice looking trading card, though. It's going to go with the rest of my trading cards in my sheets. Let's move those off to the side. The figures also as well come stacked on top of one another, the exact same display stand. Same in the sense that they have the DC logo printed down below. Same in also the sense that they also have the pegs on the top that can plug into either one of the figures' feet. I would rely more on these than the next thing that we're going to have a look at. I want to bring to your attention the fact that the figures come included with a diorama scene. The scene does have pegs. There's a peg here. Well, there are some of the pegs. There's one, there's two, there's one over here also as well. The idea usually with these is the fact that you can have both figures displayed on top of them. Good luck trying to pull that off. While it does look good from a using translucent purple perspective, what I don't understand though is that it detaches. Not that I broke it, but you can see there's a peg and a peg that line up then with the holes on either side. My only real guess is that they made it separable like this so that you'd be able to get in there and actually attach the figure's feet properly. If this was all one piece, there would also be some concerns, I would imagine, trying to take this out of the mold. If you actually look at it, it consists of 3 parts, not just the 2. We take this one off. This one actually does attach as well, but it doesn't come off at all. And I'm not even going to try to fight it either for the risk that it may break some of this purple plastic. So yeah, again, like it's a bit of a busy display stand. It makes no sense really whatsoever. And again, let's just get everything lined back up. This is always something that falls off frequently. And the moment it also falls off, let me just take it off right now for a second, it also just off-kelters the display stand. So if you try to put your figures on top of it, which again has the peg right there, and a peg right over here and here, trying to attach those figures, as you probably saw at the beginning of this review, while these poor characters were rotating on a turntable, this thing was wobbling around. I just wish that this was all one piece. I certainly wish, though, that they didn't make it so complicated the way they did, and just give us maybe just a simply flat display stand, some flame effects around it. I just don't think I'll ever really display this with either Atomic Skull or Superman for that matter. Off to the side, the figure also comes included with dedicated hands for both of them. Dedicated for Superman, the figures come included with more relaxed hands. If you wanted to put him in a flight pose, the original Action Comics Superman, I believe, did come included with an action flight stand. The new Superman, of course, the one that gets packed along with Atomic Skull, does not. Yet still the flight hands, you just need yourself a flight stand if you want to have the figure airborne instead. The hands themselves can be swapped out. As he has right now, he only has a closed fist, and he also has himself a gripping hand. But the changing of the hands is pretty easy. I mean, you're just going to pop this off. The only thing, unfortunately, about this, as easy as it was for me to say that, the same Superman had the exact same problem, is that these pegs normally would be easy just to simply remove them, just attach them off like this. But my original Superman had the same issue. If you've had this figure, you can also let me know if you've had a similar issue. This Superman is always prone, I've noticed, with these pegs detaching from one another. You literally saw it at the beginning. Well, you saw it as I was trying to change the hands out. You go to pop it, what ends up happening is you remove the top half from the bottom half, and then you have to sandwich them back together. Anyways, let's get his flight hand back in place. There we go. Again, it always seemed to happen with this particular Superman. Let me know, again, if you've had similar issues. I guess before, of course, we look at Atomic Skull, maybe we'll get down to the details of this particular Superman. You know, it's not until you get a chance to go back to some of these earlier figures that McFarlane and his team have produced that you really realize how good they were and how good we had it with some of these earlier releases. I miss how good this Superman actually is. I already knew how good this Superman was because it's one of the ones that predominantly get featured on my shelf. But now seeing it with a slightly different color of plastic, I get a chance now to kind of appreciate it even more now than maybe I did before. One thing I really will say is the improvements is not only on the plastic, but also as well the way they painted the face. The original face was a little bit more muted, a little bit more muddier, and you didn't get his chance as much to see the finer features like his face, like his eyes, for example, which I think you get a chance now to see much better on the one that get packed along with Atomic Skull. The head sculpt is stunning. Still, again, is one of the best Superman figures we've had, and it, again, only took a bit of a break away from this figure to go back to it now to realize I don't think there's still a Superman that tops this one. I know in the reviews I've done of other Superman figures from DC Multiverse, I say, okay, this is the best Superman, this is the best Superman. But, you know, again, like to go back to the original one, maybe it was the fact it just needed some color corrections. The original Superman was fine, but just the fact that they've now painted the face as well as they have, and maybe done away with the one thing I wasn't so much crazy about with the metallic red emblem. Doing away with that, changing those too few things that they did, gives us, I feel, just a fantastic looking Superman. The head sculpt, again, from all the sides, looks more like a classic-looking Supes. He's even got the little Superman S curl there as well. The face, I do think, looks much nicer with the lighter, fair skin that they've given him. Not to mention as well, they've painted the sections for his cheekbones, and I think his eyes pop a lot nicer on this figure as well. Of course, the colors on his skin aren't the only thing that change. The now Superman suit is actually a lighter blue. And again, just to bring back in the original Superman, much darker was the blue that they've used. Even like the trunks seem so faded. Now you get the approach of doing it with a much more brighter color. You could say maybe, if anything, that the colors of the red are a little more closer to like a reddish orange. If anything, I could say that that's the one thing I wish the figure was done a little bit differently with. The colors of his cape, the colors of his trunk, and even like the colors of his boots. I think, if anything, if they could have matched the colors more closer to this, because there's a little bit more red here than there is on the actual cape. The cape comes across a little bit more like an orangey red. It just needed to be a little bit darker than what it was. Short of maybe just changing the cape color and changing maybe like the lower trunks. Perfect looking Superman. Unfortunately, though, it still retains the one problem with the original Action Comics Superman, is the fact that Superman still continues to miss leg day. He's quite muscular up at the top here, but like the original Detective Comics Batman that we looked at from the second wave, I think it was the first wave of DC Multiverse figures, they also had very, very lean looking thighs. Superman carries that over as well. If they had only just kept the proportions of this figure down and just maybe made the legs a little bit thicker, but I know, again, they're only going to use the same mold as the original Superman, but much better colors, I feel. Articulation on this guy is going to be exactly the same as that original Superman, so the head's going to rotate all the way around. Because of the ball joint, it also allows the head to look down quite low and quite high, so if you want to get this guy in a flight pose, you can easily pull that off. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. Lower to that, the abdomen area is also on a ball joint. The arms, as always, do come out at 90 degrees. You can take the arms and rotate them all the way around on both sides. And you can also swivel back and forth. The figure does have a single hinge on the elbow. It's one of those days, or back in the day when they were first doing DC Multiverse figures, instead of actually giving him a double hinge, what they do is sort of give him like a gradual hinge. So the range of hinge actually is a little bit further, but they don't do it instead of using a double hinge. They only really have a single hinge instead. The hands again rotate all the way around. The legs do split, once again relying on ratcheted joints on the insides of the thighs. The legs go forward and back, swivel mildly at the top of the thigh. The figure does have a double hinge on the knee, nice tight joints and all the things on the figure. He has, again, the articulation back and forth, up and down. And again, he has the toe articulation also as well. The only other thing I would say is not loving the colors that they went with for the cape, because I feel like it's the one thing that pulls me away from loving this figure 100%, is the color of the trunks, the color of the cape. I think both of them are way too orange. They need to be a little bit darker than what they actually were. Overlooking that, and one other thing, is that the fact that the pegs that they use for the ankle articulation is much darker than the colors that all are around it. If they had only maybe made the colors a little bit more matching to the boots, and certainly if they color the cape a little bit darker of a red and the trunks, we get a home run hit for Superman here. Still, though, I think it's a better looking Superman than we did get from the original Action Comics. I prefer the lighter classic colors myself. But again, like, it's just one of those cases. I took a break away from the Action Comics Superman. Seeing the guy again, seeing this mold again, makes me really appreciate how good we had it with that original Action Comics release. On to now, though, Atomic Skull. Atomic Skull does come include some interchangeable hands. They're similar in the sense that they are a closed fist, and they're also sort of more of a gestured hand. I believe as well, Lex Luthor did have similar hands like this as well. Now, these serve more of a purpose as well for action for Atomic Skull versus the Action Comics Superman. Getting that all tongue twisted, because almost dropped that on the floor, because this figure also has these effects that are on the ends of his hands. These aren't effects, by the way, that can be removed with the hands. They're part of the hands. So he has sort of this one kind of atomic blast effect that he has already molded to the hand itself. This is all done in translucent purple plastic. He also has something very similar on this side as well. If you don't like this, I mean, I like it because it goes along with the flames that he has on the back of his head. But if you're not as crazy about that, again, you just detach the hand. Let's hope the pegs stayed okay this time. Just detach that, and then you can just swap this out with just the regular hands. Saying regular hands and describing that with Atomic Skull seems a little silly, but again, if you want to swap those out and only have really one of them, you can swap out both of them if you want. I think I'll just leave one for right now. The head sculpt for Atomic Skull, some say look a lot like Ghost Rider. I certainly see that also as well. The head sculpt is really good on this one. It's really hard to pull off something that has flame effects when it's coming out from the back of a skull. I mean, this is one of the problems that Ghost Rider has on a regular basis, just because, like, you don't know where to start the flame. You want to have enough, at least, that it doesn't start just destroying and ruining the sculpt of the skull on the front. I think there's just the right amount that you can see a little bit sort of starts on the sides of its face, and then kind of, again, it blows out the back there. Nice use of the purple translucent plastic. Again, if we were to bring in the armored suits Lex Luthor, you can see like the back of it. The back is really the most where you can kind of see the exact same mold getting carried over. I mean, I don't think, looking at it, other than really just the boots and the gauntlets, nothing else really has been done differently between the two molds. Funny enough, though, Lex Luthor has this additional rubbery piece. Atomic Skull certainly has that also as well. That's the thing that makes him different from the front. The abdomen areas are the same. The biceps and the forearms, well, the biceps and the shoulders are the same. You can see like the gauntlets are different between the two forearms. Legs are going to be also the same. Now, the thing about Lex Luthor, though, is where it may look like they're differently molded pieces, is that when you look at the thighs do have some additional green. Atomic Skull literally is just using the same mold and just casting it instead in this metallic purple plastic. Because of that, it actually for a second looks like they're using a different mold. It's not the case at all. Funny though enough, I was just trying to think, were they using this mold for something else? I was trying to look through the other DC Multiverse figures, even the ones I haven't even reviewed. I can't think of one. If you do know of one, let me know down below in the comments section. But then bringing back in the original Lex Luthor, I would love, if they haven't already decided to do this, use this mold with the front of the torso looking like this and give us a more classic looking Lex Luthor. Of course, when it comes to the lower legs, they're all basically going to be the same. The legs, actually, the lower legs are one thing also that gets changed, because now Atomic Skull also has the little orbs of white that the original Lex Luthor body never possessed. Knees are also something that's different too as well. So it's basically like from the knees down are brand new molds. The forearms are different, but all the rest of the mold, except for the front of the torso, obviously, are the exact same between the two figures. Articulation on Atomic Skull is going to be the exact same retained from Lex Luthor. So again, his head rotates all the way around. It looks down, looks up, and again, back and forth. Upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. Lower abdomen is on a ball joint. The arms hinge out, again, at 90 degrees. You can take those arms. Normally, I would have said you've been able to rotate them all the way around. But again, like softer plastic still is going to be an issue. You're not going to be able to rotate these as easily all the way around. The figure does have a swivel on the bicep, double hinge on the elbow. Hands, again, rotate all the way around. Atomic Skull's legs, once again, do splits similar to Soup's. You can take the legs and move them forward, move them back, yada, yada, yada. All the same swivel at the top of the thigh, double hinge on the knee. Ankle articulation, the same retained as Lex Luthor. And again, you got your toe articulation. Nice looking figure. The price of admission, I think, for some that would be looking to get this set is probably the idea that this is the first and only time we've gotten ourselves Atomic Skull. I hope it's not the last. Some would just say, well, I'm more interested in the Atomic Skull. I'm really less interested in Superman because, hey, we've already gotten the Superman before. And I was that same person. I sort of was just buying the set more so first, the idea of just getting Atomic Skull, but now realizing how much better of a Superman we actually do get. It's not perfect, I will admit it. Like the colors of his trunks, the colors of his cape are way too orangey for me. But it gives us a much more classic-looking Superman. And it took a head sculpt that really was fine for its time, and it just jazzes it up with some appreciated paint. Atomic Skull, of course, bringing back in the original Lex Luthor. Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't gotten this mold. Because again, maybe they're teasing. I mean, obviously this set's a little bit more older. It's quite easily able to find now. But I'm surprised that they haven't used this mold for another Lex Luthor. I mean, obviously the original one that we got was fine. But if we want one maybe a little bit more closer to like Challenge of the Super Friends, that's what I was thinking of at least. I'd love to see this mold get approached again for another updated release of Lex Luthor. What you may not be seeing here wrapping up the review of both Superman and Atomic Skull is the included diorama display stand that came included with the figures. I do like the use of the translucent purple plastic. I don't like the messiness of the construction. It's so difficult to get the figures attached onto those pegs. Didn't even show you guys actually in the review. But the stand itself is also very wobbly and it's very prone to falling apart. So I'm not going to be displaying it with the figures in final looks, and I'm not going to be displaying it either when it comes to putting these guys on the shelf. I will, though, be putting these guys on the shelf because now we got ourselves the first release of an Atomic Skull. And again, I'm sure it's not the last. Being the fact that it's a lesser known character, they decided instead to use a brand new mold. What they did instead, they used a Lex Luthor mold. What they only changed, again, tweaked some of it. But the fact that they used a torso like this that I don't even recognize, not to say that the mold hadn't been used before, I just don't identify it. I do identify the fact that the majority of his body is using the same armored suit Lex Luthor body, but yet they changed the front of his armor, and I would love to again see that use of that armor, maybe with a future Lex Luthor release. Superman is just doing what Superman does when it comes to Action Comics 1000. If you already have the original Action Comics 1000 Superman, then you already know the territory you're covering with the one that we get released here. But don't overlook this set for the Superman. If anything, get the set for Superman as well, because now we're getting Superman in classic colors. And again, it makes you appreciate how good that mold was when we first got it, just updating it with much appreciated additional colors. I don't like, again, the coloring of his cape. I don't like the coloring of his trunks. It's way too orange. It needed to be a lot redder than it was. And of course, I can always appreciate when they put a Superman emblem on the back of his cape. It's few and far between that ever seems to happen, but I think it's close to giving us a perfect looking, classic looking Superman. Get the set for Atomic Skull, but don't say I'm going to be getting the set and I just happen to get another Superman with it. No, appreciate the fact we're getting a better Superman than the first Action Comics 1000 we got from before from McFarlane's team. This is a currently available set. I mean, I'm sure you probably could find this in your regular retail stores. You could find it online. The set isn't brand new, but it's one that I still wanted to pick up. Now that I have picked it up, I'm happy to have both figures on the shelf with a new version of Atomic Skull, the only Atomic Skull, and a much better looking Superman. Have you picked up the set for yourself? Let me know down below in the comment section. And what do you think of the Superman updated color scheme? Do you think like maybe the cape is way too orange? Do you like the additional paint that they've now afforded on the figure's face? What do you like about the classic colors of Superman? Or do you just maybe prefer the original darker colors that the Action Comics 1000 Superman approached? Let me know what you think of it down below in the comment section. And again, if you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you're on board to certainly see more, we may be wrapping up things right now for both Atomic Skull and a rehashed Superman, but we are going to be looking at some more DC Multiverse reviews in the pipeline. They're coming your way. Just make sure you're coming back here on this channel, to this channel, on a regular basis. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.